Welcome to Horror Franchise Wednesday. It's time to discuss Final Destination 2 from 2003. And I got the 4-pack here. It's the only copy of this movie I own right now. It's the only one I don't own by itself for some reason. And yeah, this movie was directed by David R. Ellis. Rest in peace. He went on to do Part 4, and he directed Shark Night, or Shark Week, no, Shark Night 3D, that a lot of people hated. And this one was written by the guys who did The Butterfly Effect. I think they wrote and directed that movie. Jay Gruber and Eric Bress, who comes back to write Part 4. Now, this movie's plot is very similar to the first one. When Kimberly has a violent premonition of a highway pileup, she blocks the freeway, keeping a few others meant to die safe. But then the survivors mysteriously start dying, and it's up to Kimberly to stop it before she's next. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in my Part 1 review is that the concept for Final Destination was meant to be an X-Files episode, and James Wong and Glenn Morgan had worked on that show in some capacity. And so, yeah, I forgot to mention that. And this movie's special features are really hard to navigate. At first, it took me like 10 minutes to find the damn commentary. And this thing has this interesting special feature where it's like choose your fate. You choose a card and it tells you how you're going to die. And when I selected one years ago, when I first had this movie, back when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I remember what it said because it terrified me. It said like I was going to get my ass chewed by some baby alligator, some sewer alligator. And when I read that as a kid, I started looking in the toilet for many years after that. I'm not afraid to admit it. Yeah, this movie's special features scared me. The movie scared me, and the special features scared me as a kid. I was too scared to go to the toilets after that. So yeah, let's jump into the movie, shall we? What do I like about this movie? I really like the opening disaster. That's what these movies are all known for, their kills and their opening disasters, and this one improves on the original with the highway pileup. It's a lot more longer of a sequence than the airplane one. It's a lot more action-packed because we got an action director here. He did a lot of second unit work on action films before this. I believe this was his directorial debut. And so yeah, it feels bigger in budget. And it's the obvious next step. Like, where do you go from airplane? Well, now let's go to cars. And then the next one, roller coasters. And then, bridge. I'm surprised they haven't done a boat yet. Another thing that's improved here is the kills. After part 1 was successful, I think they quickly realized why. And that's the kills in the opening disaster. In this one, they improved on both. You got much better kills. You get more kills. You have 5 kills in the first one. You get at least 7 or 8 in this one, so you get a bigger body count, more creative kills, more gore, that beautifully mixes green screen effects with the practical effects together to give you a more convincing kill. Instead of using dummies, they use the real actors, and then they do like composite shots to make it look like it's the real actor getting like a ladder through their eye, but it's actually the dummy. With the real actor, they do some special effects to make it look like it's the real person getting killed on screen, and it looks beautiful. Same with Rory later on. Like, the effects in this movie are fucking awesome. The kills are amazing, phenomenal. Some of the best kills in the franchise, I believe, are in 2 and the next movie. And one thing that makes this movie stand out from the other ones is that this one kills a child. Yeah, he looks like he's probably 17, 18, like all the characters were supposed to be in part 1, but he's 15. And originally in the script, he was supposed to be 9, and the studios were not having that, so they compromised on 15. But could you imagine that death with a 9-year-old? That would have been much better. And another thing that stands out about this movie is that it's the only one in the franchise that doesn't have a funeral or a memorial service. I love that the characters in this movie have connections to part 1. I thought that was cool. None of the other movies do it, so that's something else that's special about this one is the characters in this one. They're on this list. Death is trying to kill them because they were meant to die a year ago, and they're only alive now because of the people who died getting off the plane in the last movie. So I thought that was cool. Like, I wish the other movies could have done that, but I guess that would just be repetitive. But the whole franchise is really, imagine like the characters in 3 got on the roller coaster and they're alive because of these people dying in part 2. Like they could have kept that going, but I thought that was a really interesting thing they threw in here. I really liked the whole backwards angle that this one took, that death is going backwards, only because, and I feel like this is why they did it, to kill the friends first that you thought were going to be the main characters throughout. Because the way this movie's set up, it's a very quick setup with her and her friends, and you're like, okay, these are my main characters, these are who I need to focus on, and then boom, they're gone right away, only because death is working backwards. But unfortunately, that's really the only reason, and they don't cleverly make the list in this movie line up with the list in part 1. If they did that, the backwards thing would be cooler, but it doesn't line up. It would line up if if Rory and Eugene were to switch the order of their deaths in this movie, or if they just switched their stories, then it would work. Another thing that I realized watching it this time is that if you really think about it, the way they die in the pileup is similar in a way to how they die later on. And even the log kill, that guy is supposed to die in a wood chipper in Final Destination 3. In the newspaper article, we read that. Evan surrounded by fire with his Firebird. Later on, his apartment's on fire. The kid and the mom, the car won't stop. The elevator won't stop. She's crushing this bottle. Her son gets crushed. The woman who gets the pipe through her head, the way her head whips back in slow motion in the premonition, that's how she dies later on, her head flying back. The Eugene, he's in a lying down position when he dies with his motorcycle, just like he's lying down in a hospital bed when he dies. Like, if you really think about it, they all die very similar in the premonition and afterwards. I like that they brought back Clear Rivers from part 1, just to have more continuity to that film, because after this, we never have that again. There's no characters from one movie to the next. This is the only time it happens. And it makes total sense that her character would be living in a padded cell. Like, that was the obvious choice. And just like the first movie, this one has lots of clues and lots more visions that I'm not really huge on, but I like the little clues that on the second watch you realize, like, oh shit, that's foreshadowing this death. Like, there's so many clever little Easter eggs and clues in this movie. Getting into what I don't like about the movie is I feel like the dialogue in this film feels a bit forced at times, and there's way too much exposition. There's too much trying to figure it out and, explain what happened in part 1 and, explain why it's working backwards. And it's like, it's too much. Like, have one character say it, don't have 3 or 4. Like, you got this guy in the opening telling you everything that happened in part 1, and then later on you got Eugene basically saying verbatim the same shit the guy on the television said, and then you got Clear and Kimberly repeating each other throughout the movie, trying to get everybody else to understand what's happening. It's like, it's too much exposition throughout.
Someone in this car is about to get whacked, right? Did the rest of us really feel like sitting next to him? Or her?
Another thing that's a bit too much in this film is the humor. I wish they would have dialed it back some. I like Rory. He's the comic relief. He's this movie's Billy Hitchcock. But to me, he goes a little too far. He has scenes that feel like deleted scenes. Scenes that would definitely make the cutting floor usually. But like the elevator scene, like, just take that out. It's not character development. We already know he's a goofball. Like, just take out moments like that. Like, is that dog shit, dude? Like, come on. Like, take that out. Take out some of the humor in the third act. It's just too much. This movie replaces the suspense of part 1 with just humor. There's hardly any suspense in this movie. They bring back Tony Todd, unfortunately, and in this one, it's even more evident that he is supernatural, that he's clairvoyant himself, or he's the Grim Reaper, taking the form of a mortician. He knows their name. Not only does he know Clear's name, he never really got it in part 1. He knows her name as soon as they walk in, and then he knows Kimberly's name. Did they print her name in the paper or something? How does he know their names? And also their names in this movie are named after horror producers and shit. Like in part one, you got Corman. The main chick is Kimberly Corman, and then you got Carpenter for Tim and Nora. So that's another carryover from part one. But yeah, Tony Todd's character, like he's extra. He kind of hams it up a little bit in this one. Like he like breaks the fourth wall and smiles at the audience. Like I don't like that stuff. So take his character out of here. And again, it's just more exposition, and he's creating this new rule. So now you're like, well, where was this information in part one a year ago? Like, why didn't you tell Clear and Alex, like, hey, if you want to defeat death, all you gotta do is fuck your girlfriend here, get her pregnant, and now you'll have a soul that wasn't on death's list. So where was that rule before? I don't like this new rule. Doesn't make sense, and the movie just gets too convoluted by the end. I also don't like Kim having multiple visions. Like, why couldn't they just keep it like the first one with little clues? Like, you just get a glimpse of the train, the bus, the piece of paper, the ashes. Like, there was clues, little things like that for every single person on the list. And this one, it's inconsistent. Like, she has no clues whatsoever to warn her about Evan, but then she sees the pigeons, and then the man with hooks, and then she starts having full-on visions, like the premonition all over again. And it's just like, what? Just keep it to one. Keep it simple. Like, why is Death trying to help her cheat Death in the end, like telling her to kill herself, like trying to help her out in that way? Like, Death wouldn't do that. So who's doing this? Who's giving her these visions? It just doesn't make sense. Another thing I don't really like about this one, it's a little nitpick, but just comparing it to like part one and three that do it more clever, is how deaths happen in this movie, like what Death has to do to make these things happen. He's much lazier in this one. In this one, he is straight up moving things. He did it a teeny bit in part one, like I pointed out with the car locking and not starting, like that seemed like Death doing something there. But for the most part, things bumped into other things. There was wind that, explained it away. It wasn't Death forcibly causing something. In this one, Death is straight up just moving shit left and right and not allowing things to just happen on their own and create like a domino effect. Death in this one is like slamming windows, slamming ladders, moving shit in the hospital. It got lazy. It's like, fuck it, I'm done with this. I'm just gonna push this here and now this will happen. I don't like the treatment of Alex's character from part one. I get that he didn't want to come back for part two for some reason. Money, I don't know, a conflict of his schedule, whatever. But that's not what you do with his character. If you're gonna kill him, kill Clear too. I feel like they both should have been in this movie, but how he got killed was pretty lame. And also, I'm not a big fan of the you can't kill yourself angle. It's kind of in part one a little bit, but they don't talk about it. It's just you notice it now in retrospect, like, oh yeah, it seems like Alex can't die no matter what, as he's trying to get to Clear, because he's not next, so he can't die. But they don't say it. In this one, they make it a point, like, you cannot die if you're not next. He shoots himself, all 6 bullets are duds, and it's like, really? So you're telling me if he jumped out the window at that moment, something would have intervened and saved his life? It's ridiculous. Like, take that whole angle out. And they do it again in part 4, and they make it extra comedic in that one. And one thing that's gone from the rest of the franchise, I haven't seen 4 in a couple of years, so I could be wrong, but going off of memory, there's no more shadows. Part 1 was the only one where Death actually had a shadow in like reflections. You could see him in the pot on the stove, and then you could see him in the mirror and the rear view mirror. And like, and this one, the next one's like, you never see that again, so that's gone. So that kind of bummed me out. Like, what the fuck? Why not? So final thoughts. This is an amped up sequel with more gruesome kills, more humor, but on the other hand, it has less suspense and less character development. I'm not really as into the main couple in this one, Burke and Kimberly. I'm not as into the third act as I am part 1, but I still really enjoy this movie. At one point, I used to like this movie way more than part 1, but over the years, the more I watch it, a little bit gets taken away each time, but I still really enjoy it because of the kills and the opening disaster and the fun clues sprinkled throughout. It's still an enjoyable ride. So when it comes to Final Destination 2, I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. All right, let's get into some spoilers. Let's try to keep this review under an hour. Let's see. So this whole opening, we get a couple of little clues, and we get this exposition dump, catching the viewers up on what happened in part 1. This conspiracy guy on TV seems to know a whole lot, and that should have been Clear, or that should have been Alex before he died. Missed opportunity. That would have made much more sense, being Alex or Clear. Should not be this jackass who we don't know. So yeah, I don't like that. And the scariest part of this movie is the spider crawling on the bed. It's scary to think that a spider like that could be crawling on you in your sleep. You'll notice that something says road trip, but the T is missing, so it just says RIP, R-I-P. And it's the 1-year anniversary, so I guess Death likes to celebrate new list on the 1-year anniversary. So it's like, all right, it's that time of the year. It's time to start a new list. And also, the host on the TV, he got the number of students in part 1 completely wrong. Out of nowhere, Kimberly's bedroom door just slams shut. So Death is already kind of stalking her, like slamming her door shut just to scare her. Like, that just felt like a cheap scare to throw into the movie. It was just random as fuck. Like, what the hell is Death doing? I'm gonna scare you before you get in your car. Haha. I don't know much about cars, but I guess transmission fluid is red, but it just makes her car look like it's on its period, and it makes me laugh every time. So in part 1, Alex only had like 1 clue, really, or 2, the girls talking to him, and then that thing that broke off. He had like 2 things to go off of to know that what he saw was a premonition and that it was going to happen. And this one, she sees and hears like a dozen different things, but of course, by the time the premonition's over, she just goes off of the first thing, the lady with the cans, to know that it's a premonition, that it's all going to happen. But there's so many different little things that happen, all these little clues, signs of bad luck, bad shit's going to happen sometime soon. Like, she sees the kid with the truck and her red car, like, banging into each other. That felt pretty odd and forced. Like, really? What are the odds of that? That he has a red truck there. And then you got a guy drinking and driving a beer truck. You got the AC/DC on the radio. And you got fucking the pile up chant on the bus. And that's the same school from part 1. It says Mount Abraham on it. And they even have the same design jacket that Carter was wearing in part 1 also. And speaking of, Highway to Hell, AC/DC, just to tell a quick story. So my dad went to see this at the theater, and then when my sister, who's older than me, 6 years older, I was too young to go see this at the time. She went to go see it with her friends, and then when my dad picked her up, when they got in the limo, because we used to own a limousine, when he picked up her and her friends, he blasted Highway to Hell to scare the shit out of them. Out of nowhere, we get a biker and his girlfriend, and the girlfriend just flashes her tits that look pretty fake and very familiar. Where have I seen those tits before? Had to be the same year.
Mike? Is that you?
One thing I didn't notice until multiple viewings is that you can already see the log truck's chain snapped. It's already on the ground, dragging, and that's what Officer Burke is kind of looking at right before his coffee distracts him. He's like, what the fuck is that? Like, you can already see that something's wrong here. And in case you didn't know, logs do not bounce. They're not made of helium or anything that would make them float up like that. Like, if you dropped logs off of the truck, they'd hit the ground and then just keep rolling. They wouldn't go bung, bung, and then smack into your face, which is a pretty fucking cool kill. Then we get the second kill in this premonition with Eugene sliding off of his motorcycle, and his motorcycle comes up and kills him. Good thing he's wearing a helmet, right? You'll notice, at least I noticed on this watch, when he falls off that bike, he is way behind the bike. The bike went ahead of him in one shot, and then the next shot, somehow he got ahead of the bike, and then the bike caught up and killed him. Another thing that took me multiple viewings to notice is that when Rory gets hit by that truck, you can see the dummy being dragged across the concrete, or asphalt, sorry, which is brutal. Like, you can see him being dragged afterwards. That was pretty awesome. And more dummies later on, you can see when the main car of all the friends is flying around. You can see the dummy's head going through like the sunroof. Oh man, or maybe that was a crazy ass stunt woman. Who knows? Kat's kill in the premonition is pretty not spectacular at all. Like, I'm not even convinced she's dead. Like, she just goes, oh, like her head flies back, much like later on when she flies her head back against that pipe. But her kill could have been way better. And then you get, Tim and Nora getting killed because of Tim's water bottle. So he's the one killing his mom in that situation. And then Evan is next to his Firebird in front of a fire wall. And then some truck just drives through this wall of fire. Like, where is that truck going? Are the brakes broken? Like, why would that truck be driving still? Seriously? And it's like jackknifed too. It was just a bit ridiculous. Like, why are these people not stopping? I get the roads are wet, but come on, seriously. Like, it was just crazy how that truck just drove through a whole wall of fire. Like, it was going to be safer on the other side and no one was going to be there. And then, boom, he gets smashed and then drives towards our final girl here, Kimberly. We see and hear the number 13 a few times in this movie. We got Officer Burke in Unit 13 and the 13 ball on Eugene's keychain. And then this movie continues the 180 trend with next 180 feet being construction. So I like that they threw that in here just to tie it to part one. And just like in part one, but worse, is the vision does not line up timeline wise with like how it happens afterwards. Like, it's her driving for like 5 minutes. So they're like a couple miles down the road when this log truck lets the logs go and everything goes to shit. But then, she blocks the thing, has a whole minute there where she's talking to the cop, and then the log truck starts driving. But that thing was already ahead of them. That thing was always ahead of them in that premonition, but now it's like all the way back here, just now catching up to them. It does not line up at all. And then the fucking log truck causes this car accident pile up like not even a quarter mile down the road from that ramp. So it does not line up at all with the premonition. I guess the truck driver who killed her friends was drunk or blind, or he just needs to be arrested or he just needs to feel guilty for this shit for the rest of his life. I mean, that person, could you imagine how guilty you would feel being responsible for murdering like 3 people because of your awful driving? Like, how did he not see this parked car that was there the whole time? Like, the accident and shit's happening, like I said, like pretty far down the road. Not that far though, not like the premonition. But this truck driver just somehow, what was he doing? Texting? Like, how did he not see her friends parked there? So then we get the police interrogation scene. This is kind of like what happened after the plane in part one, the FBI getting involved. This one, it's the police. But why? Like, I get interviewing her, but it's not like you can blame her for what happened with the logs and shit. So it's like there's no like FBI investigation here. There's no possible terrorist act. It's just weird that they're all there at the police station. Is there a cop watching this right now that can explain why this is necessary? Is this protocol? Like, why are they all there? Especially Evan, too. Like, he's being separately interrogated. For what reason? They have him in the other room, and everybody else is in that room together. Like, they're interviewing them? We never get to see the interviews, but it's pretty much implied that they were questioning all of them. What were the questions? What could they possibly be? The only one that needs to be questioned is Kimberly, so I don't understand the police station scene at all. The only reason why it's here is so that they can all get the history of Flight 180. So let's talk about Evan's death scene and all the clues and shit within. Alright, so this scene opens up with a doll on the ground with a missing eyeball. And if you've seen the movie, you'll know that he loses his eye at the end. So we got that on the ground, the doll with the missing eye, and he spent a lot of his lottery money on stupid shit. He bought an iMac, and there's also an ambulance toy on the ground, and that kind of foreshadows the whole ambulance shit that happens in the third act. And when he trips over that doll, he goes, Jesus Christ! Huh. And then that's exactly what he says later when he's about to get killed. And he buys this golden ring that has a horseshoe on it, and it's known as bad luck if the horseshoe is facing down. And that's the way it looks when he's looking at it. And then when he drops it down the sink, it drops with the horseshoe facing down. And I like the misdirection here where you think he's going to get his hand all fucked up in a garbage disposal. And then you got the magnets on the fridge that says, "Hey E," because his name's Evan, but the H falls off into his leftover noodles. And so now it just says Eye. And you can also see that he has like a toy version of his Firebird car in front of one of the windows. And just like his death in the premonition, right before he dies in this scene, he is surrounded by fire. I feel like this movie is a morality tale. Like, you got don't smoke with Kat reaching for her cigarettes and shit, and then she gets killed, and her cigarette kills Rory. And little Timmy is smoking, and that's why he's at the dentist to get his smoke-filled teeth cleaned out. And now the message here for this kill is don't litter. He throws out mom's spaghetti, and then trips on the spaghetti later on, and that's what ultimately gets him killed.
Jesus Christ!
I would have preferred if the scene didn't do the whole fake out thing, giving him a moment to breathe and be, oh, Jesus Christ. I think it just should have went. All right? That way it's more believable that this thing could go through his head like that. I know your eye's like the softest tissue on the body, but still, like, it was like 6 inches from his face, and it went down with such force, making me believe that it's death forcing that down. Again, death is lazy in this one. He's moving, he's shutting his windows, and then he's forcing the ladder down. It would have been much better if it just would have hit his face when it initially dropped. Another thing that's bad luck in that scene with Evan is walking under the ladder. That's a superstition. If you walk underneath a ladder, it's known as bad luck, and you're going to get a ladder through your eyeball. I did think it was kind of funny that there was all these women and his pals on his answering machine. The guy's like, you lucky fuck, let's hang out. Well, he's not so lucky now. And there was these girls like, I heard you won the lottery. Let's hook up. And you find out he only won like, what, 50,000 or 100,000? He didn't win millions. And he's blowing it all on shitty things. Look at his apartment. It's a shit show. And he blows it, all his money, on like an iMac, a gold watch, and a fucking ring for himself, I think. It wasn't like a diamond engagement ring. He's buying his own man ring, and then he's buying a Firebird. Like, I'd get a new place first. Then we can start focusing on other small things. So apparently there's a public website that just has photos of everyone's dead body in part 1. Like, somebody somehow got a photo of Terry's body before they bagged it up, and Todd's. And there's like little quotes underneath each photo, or descriptive words of the photo, like, this is a photo that was taken before the police arrived. Are you kidding me? So what, some fucking pedestrian, some citizen just walked in Todd's house and took that photo of his dead body before the coroners could get there? That's ridiculous. This public website would not have these images on it. I hope not, but maybe. Just like that TV, that news station would not play the footage of Kimberly's friends being demolished by that truck on prime television for kids to watch also, but also the parents of those kids that got killed. Could you imagine being the mother and you're watching the news and then they just show you the footage of your kid getting ran over? Like, that's fucked up. Then we find out that Alex was killed by a falling brick, which is kind of lame. Other ideas they had for killing him was a flesh-eating disease or a ceiling fan or a spider bite somehow killed him. They should have just killed him by having him go crazy, putting his girlfriend in the trunk, driving off a bridge while recording a message for Eminem. That would have been much better. Get it? Because he was Stan in that music video? So Tim and Nora, the mother and son, who would later star together, and She's the Man, in this scene he's reading a Stephen King book called Bag of Bones, and that's basically what he is after he dies. It's nothing but a bag of bones being carried away. He gets demolished. And the mom even says something that kind of foreshadows her death, is she goes, oh, some people just need rewiring. Yeah, kind of like that elevator that's clearly malfunctioning and chopping your head off. And also, when that scene ends with him in the bed, the shadow on his face kind of makes him look like a skull, which was pretty interesting. It doesn't look so much like a skull, but if you pause it at the right moment, it kind of looks like a skull. The asylum where Clear has committed herself is the same location that was apparently used for Halloween Resurrection, right around the same year this was filmed. And that Asian guy they show, or he looks Asian, that's supposed to be like a nod to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the big character in that movie, the tall guy. Very subtle nod to that movie. You wouldn't even know it unless someone told you. But yeah, I like that she's in a padded room. It makes sense. But honestly, I think I would rather die. Like, that's basically the same as death. It's terrible. Like, that's not living. Living in that padded cell. Like, I would just kill myself. And what's to stop death from, like, letting an airplane crash into that part of the building and kill her? And also, she has like this whole wall of shit. I think that's a little ridiculous. Like, she's trying to keep up on what's going on in the outside world, Flight 180 related. And she has this impossible picture, something that movies like to do all the time, in sequels especially. They'll show something from the first movie, but it's like obviously a still. But in this case, it's a picture of Carter, Alex, Clear, Miss Luton, Billy, and Terry all hanging out, hugging each other right outside that coffee place right before Terry gets killed. They're wearing the same clothes. It looks like it's a photo from the set that day. They did not ever get together for that picture. They weren't even fucking friends. All right, especially at that point. Like, it's ridiculous. That photo should not exist. Another photo she has on that wall is a picture of dead Alex in like a Polaroid. Did she take that picture? How did she get access to that picture if it wasn't hers? And B, why would you want that as a constant reminder that you failed to protect him and intervene to save him, Like, they were like, she says, like, we were cheating death for months, dozens of times we were cheating death. And then a falling brick ended it all. But it's like, why would you want that picture in your room? A. And B, does everybody get their own private little screen, that little monitor, so she can see who's at her door? Is that just like her special privilege? Or does everybody else get that at that asylum also? And this is when it's revealed that Death is working backwards, and she acts confused at first, but then later on in the car, when they realize how they're connected to the people in part one, she's like, oh, it all makes sense now. It's like, does it? Like, she jumps on board so quick, like, yeah, it all makes perfect sense. I get it. It's tying up loose ends. But it's like, yeah, well, it would work better. It'd make more sense if you were to switch a couple of these deaths around so that it would actually line up with who died in part one. Todd died, which caused Kimberly to live. That's why she's the first one to almost get killed in this one. And then who's next? You got Terry, who died, and because she died there, Kat lived, and she dies second after Evan, Tim, and Nora, who are three people who have no connection to people in part one. And then you got, it's when you get to Carter and, from part one, and whoever else, Luton, with Rory and Eugene, where it doesn't work. You got to flip it for it to actually line up. A line of dialogue that I noticed this time that I just scratched my head at because I couldn't believe it. Like, so after Evan is killed, the next day, she is talking to Officer Burke, and he's like, I've been getting phone calls all morning from the other survivors. We're going to schedule a meeting tonight. Do you believe for 1 second that everyone else from that ramp called Officer Burke after Evan died? Fuck no. They're all, what's the word? Non-believers. Right? They do not believe. They're skeptics. That's the word. They're all skeptics. Eugene especially, I don't believe for a second that they would be calling. Like, we need to schedule a meeting. We got to talk about this. Like, bullshit. So then we get the dentist scene. One of the best set pieces in the movie. I love this scene. This is the only scene that really has any kind of suspense at all, because going to the dentist is scary. And how weird is it that this scene looks like Finding Nemo? So similar. And I think that movie came out the same year. Like the fish tank, the kinds of fish that are in there, the skull thing, and the thing that the fish gets stuck on that thing, just like in Finding Nemo. And that kind of foreshadows Tim's situation in the other room. The fish falling and getting stuck in the mouth of that pipe. And then the fish falls and gets stuck in his mouth. And a pigeon breaks through. That's bad luck, apparently, if a bird flies into a building. That's known as bad luck. And one thing I want to point out is I feel like Tim and Nora should have died at the same time, because they died at the same time in the premonition. So why didn't they die at the same time? In part 4, if you die at the same time in the premonition, you have to die at the same time after. But they don't do that in this movie. And another thing is that actor playing the dentist, he is one of the captains on the ship in Jason Takes Manhattan. A little interesting piece of trivia. So 2 actors in this movie are from the Friday the 13th franchise.
If he gives me the gas and I wake up with my pants unbuttoned, we ain't paying.
Tim.
I like that they brought back John Denver's music from part 1. You can barely notice it. It's like an instrumental version of it. You can hear it playing in the waiting room at the dentist office, and it's playing in the elevator later on with like Rory in that scene. So I like that they carried that over from part 1. And I like that you can see what ultimately kills Tim early on in that scene. When he's getting his teeth cleaned, you can see the glass moving around outside. And then later on, when he scares the pigeons, the glass is what ultimately kills him. It crushes him flattens him like a pancake. And if I were the mom, I would fire the cleaning lady because she's responsible. They call the cleaning lady who tells them that they're at the dentist, and that's how they know to go there and say, pigeons, pigeons, and then causes this to happen. If they never arrived, who knows what would have happened to Tim? He would have died some other way. You'll notice that the name of the hospital is Ellis, named after the director. And then after this, we get the whole Tony Todd scene, and I already said my piece on it, so all I'll add here is how gross it is seeing him rip the nipple off of Evan's corpse. And also, you'll notice he's wearing Evan's watch, so he's grave robbing now. You also get a line here that foreshadows Clear's death at the end when Tony Todd says, "You got such fire in you." Elizabeth's mugshot looks like it must have been taken from the future, because when you look at the mugshot, it looks like her later on in the cell wearing the same clothes, looking like she's pregnant, about to give birth. Like, that's such a stupid thing. Like, why couldn't they just taken a normal photo of her in a different outfit to convince us that she got arrested at some other point? Like, her mugshot, she hasn't been arrested yet when we see that mugshot. But it clearly is from later on in the film. I just want to tell a quick story about the dog shit scene. The guy, Rory, in the elevator, that the elevator wall, by the way, is trisected, the design pattern, just like Rory is trisected later on. But just to tell a quick story, so the dog shit thing. Me and my cousin, we used to play this little game where we have a mouthful of water and we try to make the other person laugh. And we had seen this movie and, we loved it. And we always thought this scene was hilarious. So eventually, if we couldn't make the other person laugh, we'd pull this scene out. It was like a trick. It was one of our cards we would play. And we would be like, "Is that dog shit, dude?" And we'd get the other person to laugh. We'd spit out the drink every time. We thought this scene was hilarious growing up. I don't know why. We would just take our shoe off and be like, "Is that dog shit, dude?" And then we'd spit out the drink every time. So at this point in the movie, they all decide to have a slumber party at Officer Burke's place. They're going to death-proof it like the cabin in part 1 with Alex. And so they're going to stay there until the baby arrives. And what's funny is, after Clear is almost killed, Eugene says, "If death is out to get you, then just stay the fuck away from us." Saying that she's dangerous and anyone around her is going to get killed. And it's funny because she gets Eugene killed. So if she had just listened to him and stayed the fuck away, he wouldn't have died, maybe, but she's the one that causes his death. She's the one that opens the door at the hospital and kills him. So it's just funny hearing him say that now in retrospect. Another person Clear is responsible for killing is Nora, in a way. After the whole Man of Hooks thing, she runs out to the elevator and hits the button. And, they're on the 3rd floor. They're going down to the, level L, and she hits the button, so then when Nora is getting out, the thing closes, wanting to go back up to her level. So, way to go, Clear. And how long does it take for that elevator to get down 3 floors? It's ridiculous how long the elevator ride is. And I can't stand the guy with the hooks. Why did he have to be a fucking perv sniffing her hair? That's too much humor. I would take that out of the movie completely. I hate it every single time now. And it's funny that earlier in the movie, after her son dies, she's like, "I'm ready to go. My husband's dead. My son's dead. If it's my time, I'm ready to go." But then right before she dies, what does she say? Then Eugene tries killing himself, but we find out that you can't kill yourself in this movie if you're not next. And one thing I never heard him say before, but if you have your captions on, you'll know that he yells out, Oprah. Like, fuck you, Oprah. I'm going out on my own terms. Like, again, humor. Too much humor. Take it out. There's a bit of a writing error here. A little goof they made is having Rory say that he saw Carter get hit by the falling sign 12 months ago. This movie takes place 12 months after the airplane explosion, but the falling sign in Paris thing happened 6 months after. And this is happening, this movie, 6 months after the Paris thing. So he should have said, I saw a guy get hit by a sign 6 months ago, not a year ago. If you were Kat in this situation with the pipe in your car seat, wouldn't you tell the others, like, hey, can we remove this? I understand the thing on my lap is hard to remove, but what about this? They never established that that was too hard to remove. So that's a mistake, because you're just stuck wondering why it's still there. Like, why the fuck would they keep that there? That's stupid. And how quick is the news response? Like, they call the cops because of the car crash, and the news are there, like, at the same time as the police, if not before. This is like Woodsboro all over again. I like the scene with Rory talking to Kimberly, stating, like, his will, like, when I die, I want you to take away all my porno, my paraphernalia, my drugs, anything that would break my mom's heart. And I heard that that scene was originally, it was supposed to be shot in an earlier scene, but then they decided not to, and they almost didn't put the scene in the movie at all. But I like it. I like it. It's the right character saying that shit. Like, if it was some other character, it wouldn't feel right. Like, his character's goofy. Like, he should be the only comic relief in the movie, so I like him saying that, and it's pretty funny.
Could you be a little quieter with that thing, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll just put it on quiet mode.
That would be good.
So then we get Kat's kill after a very sarcastic remark. I'm going to put it in quiet mode. Will that shut you up? Maybe if you shut the fuck up, you'll live, right? So I think this scene's a bit of a missed opportunity. I think it would have been cooler because you see it coming. I think this death could have played out better if it was like something that happened in the background. Like, imagine the scene playing out this way. In the foreground, we have Clear and Kimberly talking to each other about whatever. And then you just see in the middle of the screen, kind of in the background, like maybe 15 feet behind them, you just see Kat just doing her own thing, and poof, it just happens in the back. And then after it happens, they hear it and they look over, and then you cut to the close-up that we see in the movie, and the airbag deflating. Like, imagine that playing out that way. I think that would have worked better. It just would have been something shocking in the background that you didn't see coming. Because the way it plays out now, you're like, okay, here it comes. I'm going to put it in quiet mode. And then it happens. It's like, it's too predictable. But the way I described it, that would have been much better. Then we get Rory's kill, one of the best, caused by the wind and Kat's cigarette and reckless driving by the news team. I like how this was set up, and the CGI barbed wire fence flying by him, and the way they pulled off this green screen kill, pretty effective. I like that not only did it chop him in 3 separate pieces, but it also got his arm, but not the other arm, because like he was like drinking something. So it's like his arm was up, and then it just chopped the other arm and the hand off. So it's like 3 different pieces, his arm and his body. Awesome. And the way his body like falls down, and you see the innards coming out at the last second. Great kill. So then we get the whole hospital shit after Rory's death, and this is when the movie starts to take a little bit of a nosedive for me, and I get less interested. I'm not as engaged with what's going on here. I feel like the whole twist reveal of she was never meant to die in that thing, the pregnant lady, is like, well, no shit. Like, that should have been obvious. I can't say for sure if I would have predicted that twist the first time I watched it, because I watched it for the first time when I was like 8 years old, so I wouldn't have been paying attention to the story. I was just focused on the kills, so I don't know if I would have predicted it, but it seems predictable because you don't see her die in the pileup. So that was just kind of a weak twist. Like, I like that there was an attempt here to like throw in a twist, kind of like in part 1 where it's like, I switched seats, even though it doesn't really make much sense, but it doesn't really work. And then the whole new life thing doesn't really make much sense. All her visions, for some reason, she doesn't recognize the back of her own hands. And she's like, bloody hands. And then Clear's like, Eugene. And then she should have been like, Kimberly should have been like, no, white hands. They're white hands. It's not Eugene's hands. They're white. They're mine. Like, she thought she was talking about Eugene. like, oh, the bloody hands, you must be talking about Eugene's. Like, she should have been like, no, Caucasian, they're Caucasian hands, not black. And so everything here is like forced. Like the way Death is working, he's purposely moving shit left and right. He's shutting the fucking like the air vents, and then he's moving this cart over here. He's ripping a hose out of a tank. And then just, it's so forced. There's nothing clever about it. There's no like this bumps into this and this bumps into that. Nothing. Then we get probably the quickest delivery of a baby ever in a film. And this double kill was actually meant to be a triple kill. When it kills Clear and Eugene, that cart was supposed to hit Officer Burke, but Kimberly and him ducked out of the way, and it would have taken his head off. It was pretty high up, so it basically would have been like the log. The cart would have been like the log hitting him right in the face. So yeah, that's interesting. That it would have been 3 kills for the price of 1. And so then she does the whole thing in the lake and drowns herself. Only new life can defeat death. And then they bring her back using the paddles on her bra. Aren't you supposed to be like completely naked? Like you can't, like it has to be, exposed skin. You can't have clothing there. Like they would have taken her bra off, right? So then they think they've defeated death, and we get this end scene here, this cherry on top ending. That's amazing. This kid in the background just blows up, and it's the kid that Rory saved earlier. So Death is catching up on him and kills him weeks later. I'm not sure how many weeks later this is, but yeah, we just see the kid blow up in the background, and a kick-ass song starts playing. So yeah, that is the end of Final Destination 2. These are the only survivors in the franchise. Everybody else dies. You get that deleted scene bit in part 3 that shows that Kimberly and the cop Burke died in a wood chipper accident, but I don't really count that because it's not officially a part of the movie. So these are the only 2 survivors in the entire franchise, if you think about it. So that is the end of my long discussion of Final Destination 2. What are your thoughts on this movie? Let me know in the comments below. If you prefer over the original, what's your favorite kill? Let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's all an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.